Hello, and welcome to the Data-Driven Marketing and the Need for an Individualized Customer Approach, Progressing Toward True Individualization webinar. Hi, I'm Bruce Rogers. I'm the Chief Insights Officer for Forbes Media, and I run the Insights practice at Forbes. And joining me today in our presentation is Jenny Barber, who leads marketing strategy for Teradata marketing applications, and she's one of Direct Marketing News' 40 Under 40 for 2014, and she drives evangelism of individualized insights, and her background is in data-driven marketing, customer engagement, loyalty marketing, CRM, social marketing, with focuses on retail, complex systems integrations, and making customer relationships more profitable. Welcome, Jenny.
Thank you, Bruce. Glad to be here.
So, Forbes was pleased to partner with Teradata. We produced research together to help illustrate and gain some knowledge around how marketing organizations are progressing in this critical area of marketing capability. And today, we know that customers expect and demand a seamless and relevant experience, the whole customerization of all, especially digital experience, let alone the integration of digital and offline experiences, has really changed the game for marketers today. And certainly we understand it as we have our own personal experiences with great customer organizations like Amazon and Zappos and so forth. And so fractured and conflicting messages from a brand make marketers seem unorganized. They annoy customers, sometimes even driving them away. And certainly the solution, and one of the ways that you get ahead of this capability is data and data-driven marketing, especially as you move towards the concept of individualized insights. And we will get into this, what that means, and how to get there in a few minutes. So Teradata, and for the purposes of this webinar and the research, we use this definition of what data-driven marketing is all about, and it's the process of collecting and connecting large amounts of online data with traditional offline data and rapidly analyzing and gaining cross-channel insights about customers, and then bringing that insight to market via highly personalized marketing campaigns that are tailored to the customer at his or her point of need. Certainly, all of the people I talk to with the research, and I also run what we call our CMO practice at Forbes, so I get the chance to talk to lots of marketing leaders around the world. Certainly, this is an aspiration for every organization. Whether they get there or not is another matter, and certainly the research will add some context to that. So data-driven marketing is the means that leads to individualized insights, and that helps move you beyond segmentation to one-to-one personalization in a real-time context, which is also key, and achieving the capability to distill insights at the individual level and the ability to target known customers in a digital marketing ecosystem that too often settles for close enough, and we're going to talk about, and Jenny's going to help discuss how we move towards true individualization. So let's talk about the research that we did, the idea of the journey that marketing organizations are moving to developing data-driven marketing programs that provide a single view of the customer, and the path to individualization, as we know, we certainly know and can intuit that this results in business benefits. And so to help add context to this, we did research in the fall of 2014, which we unveiled several weeks ago and are now presenting to you today. We surveyed over 1,500 marketing and communications executives worldwide across all industries, and this marketing leadership response base forms the basis for this presentation and for our conversation today. And it follows on a similar survey that was done in 2013. So we do have some longitudinal capability here to see how folks are progressing. And so let's look into that. How are people progressing in this journey? Well, Well, first of all, let's talk about the challenges and benefits and goals. And before we do that, Jenny, let's talk about your perspective on this journey folks are moving towards and how this research project is helping you to inform your customers or how they can move along this journey.
Sure. Thanks, Bruce. What we found is, starting back in 2013, there was a lot of conversation starting around data-driven marketing and what that means, what the benefits might be for marketers and for their organizations as a whole. And what's been great about this last round of research is we're starting to see that movement. Marketers are definitely looking to bring together their understanding of their customers, regardless of where that data may reside in their enterprises, and starting to tear down the silos that have traditionally kept them from that deeper level of understanding. And I know you'll share it here in just a few moments. There's this epiphany they're having now around, oh my gosh, now that I can see my customer better, what do I do with this? How can I impact the relationship that I have? And so, an entirely new set of challenges is starting to crop up. The good news is people are making progress in terms of understanding their customers better and bringing together the data that they have everywhere, both inside of their enterprises and in the larger digital ecosystem. Now it's about taking action on that, and how do we more quickly, more efficiently, and more consistently, frankly, have that relationship with the customer based on this deeper understanding.
Yeah, absolutely, Jenny. And as we walk through the research, certainly that points to this idea that tremendous strides have been made, but perhaps it's this idea that the more strides you make, perhaps the more you know what you didn't know before, and you realize how much further you have to go towards this journey and certainly aspiration for individualized marketing. But the challenges and benefits and goals, we certainly asked folks about that, and certainly the achievement today in data-driven marketing is that it is increasingly becoming embedded within the organization, and certainly a majority, 59%, are citing faster decisions as a benefit of using the data, and as we'll see here in our next presentation of the data in this, where folks are today versus where they were 2013. And to your point, Jenny, look at the strides that are being made with the sort of higher and highest level of activity around data and using data to inform marketing. And certainly the best practices is that it's embedded and used system-wide, and it's a standard way of doing business. And as we can see, there's been some movement there. But if you look at and combine both embedded and the folks who are in the category of using it as a strategic tool and interacting with business systems and product development, customer experiences, that's a good majority, almost heading towards most of the organizations we talk to today. So that seems to be the good news, that folks are moving along this journey fairly well, as you said. But as we'll continue throughout this presentation, there's some challenges that remain in getting there, and folks certainly are looking for help on how to get there.
Absolutely. And I think that what's key is that the bars are moving in the right direction, which is definitely the good news, and we anticipate even more growth in the future. For marketers that aren't yet really taking a data-driven marketing approach to their business, their competitors certainly are, is what the data is sharing with us.
Mm-hmm.
And as they look to connect not just with their customers as groups, which most people do today, but really being able to address individual customers is what's key. And taking a data-driven approach is certainly the first step towards that goal.
Absolutely. And as we saw in the differences, and quite in some ways striking differences between what we saw in just over a one-year period. In 2013, a little over a third of our respondents said their data-driven marketing was embedded, and most of their data-driven initiatives were bit of a scattered puzzle, if you will,
right.
and more of them are putting those pieces together. The dramatic difference between those who were just sort of, looking at it to those who moved in the strategic category is quite profound. And so more strategic approach to data-driven marketing has already had a positive impact on decision-making, and as we'll see, in particularly around speed to decision-making, which is so critical today in such a fast-moving digital world.
Absolutely. We believe in the power of data wherever it lies, and there's certainly benefit of using that data to marketers, and it's enabling them to be more impactful, faster, and be just smarter in general with all of their effort.
Absolutely. So let's look at the data, and as we said, the benefits of using data in making decisions. Certainly accuracy was first among them, but we're really calling attention to this idea that it's helping make faster decisions. Faster decisions create faster iterations of the learning process, and experimentation helps you move faster than your competition, as Jenny said. And you can see here the huge strides that people are making from a little under a third to well over half, saying that it is key to making faster decisions. The other benefits are better business results. Certainly it's used, and perhaps is maybe table stakes, that its data helps you become more efficient and drive inefficiencies out of your marketing operations and your marketing spend. And then lastly, for competitiveness, which you talked about a little bit, Jenny, and here, so this is sort of an interesting perspective that the respondents provide us, that while there's been tremendous movement elsewhere, this whole idea of using it as a competitive, increasing your competitiveness in the marketplace hasn't quite changed, and I'm wondering if you have a perspective on that.
I do. I think this really gets to the core of what we were talking about earlier, where I, as a marketer, better understand my customer now and have a view of my individual customer, but now I'm starting to sense my inability to act on that information. And it could be that I've not yet integrated all of the channels with which I interact with customers, or the solutions that I have that help me to communicate with my customers. And so I may have a better understanding. I may not yet be able to act on that information. And that's what's, I think, driving this kind of dead level number from the first survey to the next. I do anticipate that will change by the next time we take a look at this data. But I think that it really gets at that piece. And that certainly resonates with the conversations that we're having with marketers today, is they're really excited about the vision that they have of their customers now. But it's really making that ability to act even more painfully acute for them.
Great. And by the way, if you have questions for either myself or Jenny, please feel free to use the question and answer tool. We will certainly leave some time after the presentation to answer some of your questions that we can get to. So please make sure you take advantage of the opportunity to do that. So as we continue this conversation, this idea that, it's maybe 2 steps forward, 1 step sideways, maybe is the analogy here, that that hopefully not backwards, but at least maybe
right.
a little bit pause in the journey towards moving forward. And as
exactly, it's that inflection point, really, inflection point, I should say, for the marketers. They've taken that step to get to the understanding, and now they're really interested in being able to act on that information to build that relationship directly with individual customers.
Absolutely. So, in short, more progress is certainly ahead of us, certainly all of our marketing organizations, and challenges as a result of that journey remain. And while in 2013, 80% of marketers told us they would implement or begin projects that automate data initiatives around quality and performance management and marketing workflow processes within the next 2 years. The good news, that's clearly happened. And because this whole concept of making lack of progress, which was the top obstacle in 2013, didn't even make it into our list of 2014, and we'll show the data in a second. But clearly an issue that has, not only jumped to the forefront of this research, but to the headlines in the news. Can't go many weeks today without a high-profile discussion around security incidences, and certainly cybersecurity has, in 2014, come to the fore as the top obstacle preventing marketing from becoming more data-driven. Is that something that you're seeing and hearing in your interactions with customers?
There's certainly a lot of discussion around security and security together with privacy. I think that those issues become mixed as the customer is viewing the way that they share information with the brand. So that's certainly a high priority for marketers who are looking to honor not only the basic security expectations that customers have, but then also the privacy concerns that customers have. If we think about the kind of balance between understanding that data sharing with a brand results in relevance, and then the natural desire to be protective of your information, it becomes a conversation about value exchange for the customer. As long as the experience honors the preferences that they've expressed, that their information is protected, that there's transparency around how information is being used, then customers are much more comfortable in sharing information with a brand. So that really highlights for the marketer the responsibility that they have in this quest for greater level of relevance with individual customers to ensure that they're capturing that information, that they're protecting that information, and that they're honoring the information that's being shared with them by customers.
Right, Jenny. Certainly it is a point of sort of dynamic tension in this inflection point, I would say. Certainly it's a concern, but it is one I think that will play itself out in the marketplace as customers will provide and shop and provide customer interactions with those who are most careful with their data, and will certainly punish those who are not. It certainly seems to have happened so far. Is that something that you think we're starting to see?
Yes, I think, if there's a breach, then even if it's a brand with whom you shop regularly, you kind of hit a pause button there for a second and you reassess your choices, right? So I think the same thing holds true in sort of those basic security concerns as it does in just the experience that you're having as a whole, is the ability to marketers who are able to leverage information and provide a value back to the customer for having shared that information are the brands that customers are going to gravitate towards. And it is about that trust, both in terms of security and privacy and relevance. All of those notions kind of get bound up together, and where the customer feels their information is being best utilized and protected, together with the rest of the offering, that's where they're going to gravitate towards. So I think marketers are going to have to really wrestle with these issues if they haven't already. It's increasingly becoming an area of concern.
Indeed. So certainly, as we talk about the issues and challenges and benefits and goals, certainly the goal and primary goal, or hopefully is the primary goal of any marketing initiative, is to improve the business, to improve the top line and the bottom line, and this is and continues to be the point of both great opportunity and challenge for marketing organizations, as we see within the research. Just 39% of the folks we surveyed said that their organizations are capturing clearly identified business benefits from customer data. So as we continue on this journey to find ways to break down silos and to aggregate data and to become more customer-centric, I think folks are hitting the pause button, as you said, Jenny, and saying, okay, let's remind ourselves of why we're doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this also ties back to our earlier discussion around how well they're able to act on the information. A lot of the time they're not able to capture that benefit just yet because they haven't closed the loop with what they're able to do with the data. So I think that it gives us more perspective on what the opportunity is that's still out there.
True. So this concept of orientation toward gathering and analyzing customer data, again, here we see the 39% who are in that category. But certainly the activity is as strong as it's ever been in moving towards that goal. So in terms of the types of data collected, we asked a battery of questions around that, and certainly this centers around the concept of how can we better acquire and retain customers. I think since I've been involved in marketing and been involved in marketing research, that has been, from time immemorial, the number one concern of marketers is how do we acquire and retain customers, right? And that's no different today. But I think, as we'll see in a moment, that if we put this in the context of the 5 most challenging questions, and we aggregated those out of a list of challenges that folks faced, that gaining and retaining customers, which is the primary role for marketing within the organization, is very closely followed by the idea of how current marketing activities are helping to achieve overall corporate goals, not just, are you filling pipeline, followed by are we meeting compliance and regulations. This is partly the conversation we had, Jenny, about security and certainly how it affects reputational risk. How can I stretch my marketing budget further? The whole operational efficiency questions, and then lastly, a little more than 1 in 5 said that how can we improve our customer experience satisfaction? Although you would think that would come higher on the list.
I think it's tied really to acquisition retention, truly, that experience is so closely related that they bleed over for me, I think. I think that what was interesting is the second one, the 29%, really indicates this shift in marketing, to revenue generation and away from just being a cost center. So that certainly makes sense. And as you noted, the concerns around compliance and regulatory needs definitely, on the table for many marketers.
So if we look at the types of data that folks are who told us in the survey what they're collecting, and we broke this out by the data they're currently collecting, the data that they're using to inform marketing strategy, and of those who don't have the data for the kinds of activities that they would find most valuable. And certainly in the first 2, customer service comes at the 4. Customer satisfaction data, although only half, a little more than half. So I'm a little surprised by that. It certainly points to the idea that lots of room for improvement. Customer engagement data and usage and behavior and device data, I think those are increasingly coming to the fore. It is good to see, though, that customer satisfaction data is at the top of the list when we talk about what's informing marketing strategy. As you alluded to, Jenny, just before, those are inextricable.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, again, we've seen progress from 2013 when just 18% of marketers were satisfied they had a single integrated view of the customer, which was traditionally the biggest biggest challenge, and the folks I talk to, it still remains a challenge. But as we'll see, there are a new set of new challenges, and hopefully folks like Teradata can help our listeners work through some of these challenges. But today, 43% of executives say they've achieved fully integrated data across teams. That's congratulations. Give yourself a hand. The vast majority, almost all, 92%, agree that integrated data can enable relevant offers and interactions. So as we've made the point many times throughout this presentation, we're headed in the right direction. But certainly the idea of achieving consistency, this concept of omni-channel marketing was mentioned by 44% of our marketing respondents. And certainly that remains a huge aspiration, to be able to have a very complex, increasingly complex, multi-channel, multi-device interaction with customer viewpoint and interaction.
Yeah, I mean, if we think about it, all of us are customers and consumers in our off hours, and we have an expectation increasingly today that regardless of the channel, you're interacting with the brand, and there's a growing expectancy from the customer that there's consistency, that you will recognize who they are regardless of where they're interacting with you, and provide something that makes sense based on the information that they are sharing. You know, our personal data is important to each of us. It's valuable to each of us, and we expect to see that value recognized by the brands that we give business to.
Absolutely. So this, I think, is a good transition to this whole concept of the customer-centric experience becoming individualized. Again, glad to see that folks are moving this direction, but certainly lots of room for opportunity to move forward here. Certainly the idea that, as we've been discussing, it's not about talking to the customer, but a customer, you as a person, not just a segment in a marketing segmentation strategy. And for marketers, personalization means deriving that individualized insights about the customer so that they can supply the information they're looking for and become more trusted advisors. And one of the promising approach that we're seeing is to engage in or join a conversation the customer may already be having online or across different channels. And this individualized approach is important, as we'll see, that it trumps even the goal of acquiring and keeping customers. So back to your point that these things are becoming equally important or bleeding from one to the next. So certainly we're seeing evidence of that here. So in talking about driving individualized insights with collaboration, certainly the idea of the marriage between the users of data marketing and the enablers of data, the IT organization, is a critical relationship within the enterprise today. And now that marketers control more data than they did a year ago, almost there's an 11 percentage point increase between that, and marketers have direct access to their data to a far greater degree. This idea of silos and collaborating with IT or an external vendor seems to be less of an issue today, but there are some other issues that are cropping up. What are you seeing, Jenny?
There's definitely still room for improvement, though this change is quite positive, and it's really good to see it because, as you said, it's a critical relationship. And the brands where marketing and IT and the CMO and CIO partnering together at the top level and driving that kind of collaboration all the way through their organizations are going to be more successful because they're able to work together to gain a better understanding of the individual customer through their work in getting the information, honoring certainly the governance and compliance issues, but then also empowering each other to do this exploration around individual customers and what they need and how best to connect with them, and then act on that. So that partnership between marketing and IT is absolutely critical to success in driving these kinds of individual communications, individualized marketing. So it's, the numbers are improving, which is wonderful to see. There's definitely additional improvement to be seen. But I think as, we see the dollars and the budgets shift from what had been traditionally held over in IT over into marketing, it's going to necessitate some of this, collaboration, hopefully proactive collaboration and not reactionary.
Good point. And as we look at these marketing priorities and insights from data, we can see here again that, by the way, these are segmented by the overall priorities that we asked folks, and amongst those who self-identified themselves as having fully leveraged insights from data for this priority, so sort of a best of class versus the general population, if you will. And certainly, one, customer acquisition and retention, there's the biggest delta there. There's a big delta there, but the biggest delta, and perhaps one of the bigger takeaways perhaps from this presentation, is prove the marketing effectiveness, by measuring business outcomes, the sort of KPIs that drive the business forward, not just marketing-driven KPIs, is pretty amazing difference there. And
absolutely. Definitely some interesting little nuggets that come out of this, and it's good to see the fairly even focus between what we're able to use data to achieve and what we find to be important, that those are, for at least the top two, fairly close. You're absolutely right. This gap between how we're able to leverage the data and what the priority is between acquisition and retention is quite interesting. But we are seeing a shift, I think, in general, as we discussed earlier in the presentation, to the importance of gathering that data so that we can understand our customer and therefore understand our business at large better, and being able to utilize that information. There's definitely some gaps here still to resolve, but some good movement, I think, overall.
For sure. And if we go back to this idea of who controls customer data, it's interesting that, as we said, that marketing increasingly owns the means of its own production, if you will, or that they act a little still percentage or accessing the data from internal IT, but hopefully in a collaborative fashion, and using external vendors to do that.
I think particularly when we can partner together between marketing and IT, it's less about who has control of the data and more what are we doing to partner together to connect with the customer, I think, is the focus. So where it's putting the customer at the center is always a smart thing, and when groups do that well, then it starts to chip away at the silos just naturally by putting the customer at the center.
Well put, and exactly to the point of this slide, the collaboration between the organizations when it comes to sharing customer data. When we asked senior executives in the study, certainly a vast majority are saying that it's being done extremely or somewhat well. Perhaps, the folks who maybe are in the factory making the sausage sometimes have a little less aspirational view of the organization than senior leadership, but
right.
But still very positive overall, nonetheless.
Absolutely. And when you see that kind of collaboration at the top level, then it bodes well for the rest of the organization.
Exactly. And to that very point, certainly the vast majority, more than 80% of marketers, say that silos within marketing obscure a seamless view of campaigns and customers. it's an obvious point of a pain point if not done well, and an opportunity point if done well. So let's talk about how we can transition from this discussion of using data to create this individualized presentation of marketing campaigns and insights, and track that back to fitting into corporate objectives. And we certainly see that marketers have perhaps to some degree neglected to use data to make their business case. We made that point a few slides ago. And how are current marketing activities helping to achieve overall corporate objectives? We said there's some room for improvement there and some challenges. Certainly it was the second largest percentage of executives, 29%, who are saying that. So certainly how we can use data to make this leap between aggregating data and creating better customer experiences to ultimately accomplish what is the goal of the business, let alone the goals of marketing.
Yeah, I think if we look at acquisition and retention certainly being on top and marketers needing to differentiate from the competition, we talk about personalization, we talk about individualization. Personalization is, frankly, quite trite today. Anybody can select your name and throw that on an email and call it personalized, and that's not really what is going to resonate with customers who, understand that they have access to more options today than ever before, and the ability to flip over to your competitor in a second. So it becomes about a larger understanding of relevance based on that deeper insight into who the individual is and what the individual is looking for, what's relevant to him or her. That's what's going to differentiate brands today and allow them to certainly drive acquisition and retention, but also get to those other issues around customer experience that help to drive all of the other goodness that we see in terms of corporate objectives. So I think that's what we're seeing from marketers is this desire to rise above, just selecting certain data fields and populating files and moving into providing a series of communications across all channels appropriate to an individual that matches exactly what they're looking for and achieving this, goal of right time relevance through this individual understanding.
Well, that's great, and that's perhaps a perfect summary to what we've been talking about, Jenny, and certainly through the work that you do and Teradata overall are helping your customers move along this journey towards that ultimate goal, and certainly I'm sure you can help folks make that business case for using data not only to create personalization, but to create better outcomes for the business overall. So with that, we'd be happy to take some of the questions from our audience, and we'll leave a few minutes for that. And otherwise, I will thank my partner, Jenny Barber from Teradata, for joining me in this presentation, and thank all of you for tuning in. And as I said, we'll be happy to take some of your questions. So thank you.
Thank you.
We'll switch over to the Q&A portion of our presentation, so please use the chat function, and we'll be happy to answer your questions for the next few minutes. And if we cannot get to your questions, certainly we will make sure, especially if you have them for Teradata, that we email them and get answers for you. So again, thank you for joining us, and ask away.
Hi, this is Jenny Barber, and I wanted to answer a couple of the questions that are coming across the Q&A window. Okay, so the first question that I've received is, what about the information gathered through social media? And as we think about that from a marketing perspective, it's really about two different approaches that can be utilized. First, we can better understand the individual and what offers and content will make the most sense for that individual, what experience might be more relevant based on understanding that we gather, of course, in an approved instance where the social credentials have been shared by that customer, and there's transparency around the information that will be gathered and how it will be used. But that's an opportunity for the marketer to increase the relevance of the customer experience and inclusive of all touch points and all communications. And then secondly, we can use that social media data to have another identification point for the individual out in the larger digital marketing ecosystem. So if, for instance, I have a customer, an individual who is no longer responding to emails, perhaps they're just ignoring them, they haven't moved them out of their spam filter, for instance, by utilizing the social media credentials that have been shared by that customer, if that's the instance that we're using as our assumption, then that gives me another data point for my efforts out in digital advertising. I can ensure that that particular person is seeing a particular ad potentially based on my ability to match against that piece of data, right? So it's the ability to understand that individual better and use that to increase the relevance of that experience, but it's also the ability to have another way of connecting with that customer outside of perhaps the own channels that are very normal to my ability to outreach that individual. Okay. The second question, let me take a look at this. I've got to scroll a little bit. The most difficult part in data-driven marketing is combining all insights. For example, offline surveys, data analysis into an effective strategy. Could you suggest a way to successfully apply these findings and come up with the right suggestions or strategies? So that is definitely an interesting question, really quite broad, right? So I think that there are a number of answers that I could give you, but what I would start with is understanding where all of your data is about the customer. There's certainly a large amount of information, customer level information, that's going to be available to the marketer traditionally in most organizations, but then there's additional data points that are throughout the organization. We talked about this earlier in the presentation. Marketers are beginning to bring that together and integrate those data points around a single individual and create a more holistic view of that individual. But at the same time, they're also understanding where the gaps are and where they don't quite have all of the data points that they need about a person in order to improve the relevance of what they're offering that individual. So it allows them to kind of see what else they might be able to gather from an internal perspective and work with IT, for instance, to get those additional data points from the owned properties that they can impact most directly, but it also allows them to get better perspective on the gaps that they want to fill in from their digital ecosystem. So that they can do what's called onboarding and reach out into the digital ecosystem, understand additional behavior around individuals or groups of customers, and bring that data in to enrich their view of the customer. So those are ways that they can kind of solidify and enhance their understanding of individual customers within their world. And then once they've got more data to work on, they can do additional discovery into that data through a number of analyses, certainly some of the more traditional things that we're used to doing, but also beginning to dig into some big data exploration and really putting a bunch of data out into a platform that will allow them to do some exploration and find out what the questions are that they're not even asking yet, which is certainly an important piece of the puzzle. We have a customer that really began to understand when, as a financial customer, began to understand when customers were leaving had to do with when they were receiving certain types of communications at a certain point in their process. And that sort of discovery wouldn't have happened if they had taken a different approach to trying to solve the problem. They were really throwing behavior into a big data environment and really starting to just kind of see what was there. And that allowed them to identify an opportunity to improve an experience for the customers that they wanted to improve it for, but also understand that there are certain customers for whom it might be okay if they decide to depart, lower value, non-growth type scenarios. So there's a lot of opportunities based on the information that's available that marketers are then able to explore new things that they haven't done, improve things that they're already doing, and figure out what's the best way to make an experience more relevant. So those are some ideas of what I would suggest are ways to get started in data-driven marketing. Those are the two questions that I have so far. Are there other questions or perhaps follow-ups to those two from the folks that sent those in? And if not, feel free to continue to send them. We're happy to answer questions whenever you like. And I'm available to you at any point to explore what you're doing today and where you'd like to go in the future and see how we might be able to help you with that.
Well, great, Jenny. I think that brings us, if no further questions, I think that brings us to the end of our webcast. Maybe we'll give it a second more, see if someone else comes to the line. Okay, again, on behalf of Forbes Insights and Teradata, thanks for joining today's webcast. Hope you found it valuable, and don't forget to reach out to us via email if you decide later on that you do in fact have questions that you'd like us to address. So again, thank you. Enjoy the day.